I'm watching the clock. Morning, my name is Giegerich. I'm the founder and editor of a site called Daily Marauder on media and technology news. I'm also a blogger for the Huffington Post. I used to work with the fine gentleman at the end at HBO. He was my boss, so I have to watch what I say still. And I have been friends with this other fine gentleman for years and years. So I'll let you both introduce yourselves.
Go ahead, Rishi. All right, thanks, Caroline. Good morning, everybody. Rishi Malhotra. I'm currently managing partner of a company called 212 Media, which is a venture development company here based in the city. We have a few different businesses. Our largest business is a music business that right now is known as sort of the Spotify of India. Prior to that, I was at HBO for about 5 years, working with Caroline, building HBO On Demand. There we got to do a lot of pretty cool rule-breaking things like developing content that premiered on secondary platforms for shows like The Wire, Extras, Big Love, and I've worked with a lot of TV companies in the past, including A&E and IFC. Also good friends with Ian Schafer here, so thanks for having me.
Thanks. And I'm Ian Schafer. I founder and CEO of a digital agency called Deep Focus. Before that, I was running digital marketing at Miramax Films. Started Deep Focus basically to build an agency that was more focused on the way that people were actually discovering content and products. And in the early years, we worked with HBO in developing some of their big digital marketing efforts, and AMC, where we helped launch Mad Men. If you guys have Mad Men yourself, thank you. That was we made that thing. And we've also spent the last several years actually bringing brands into the content world as well, and using content to make them more social. So, one of the things that we do, for example, is manage Pepsi's integration with X Factor and managing all the real-time conversation around that. So, thanks for having us.
So the name of this panel is Water Cooler Gone Online. Literally, we used to stand at the water cooler and actually talk to each other physically in time about the shows that we were watching. But now we're obviously on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're doing all these things digitally. So what's the right balance of content and social TV? Where is the line between almost disrupting the content itself?
If there's no lines anymore. I mean, I think one of the things I learned several years ago is that the second we try to silo something, we set ourselves back. And create an unnecessary challenge. I mean, we're all using connected devices, and we're exploring content on these devices. And those of us who, ponied up the $99, whether it's last year or the year before, for an Apple TV, and have been, throwing content from one device to our television, know that type of convergence, which is, we always thought convergence was going to be everything on one screen, but now we realize it's everything on every screen. So, the notion that there is a wall or transparent or otherwise between these devices and between the way that we use and share content, I think we're mistaken to think that. So it's gone. The only thing holding it back are the people that are trying to preserve the problem, which is the media company.
I would just add to that, Caroline, that I think we used to be in a world of singular TV experiences, right? We call them the Sopranos years, right? Where there was that one big event on a Sunday night or whatever night, and the Monday morning water cooler was owned by that event. But now, since what we're talking about here is content that rides on top of content, and when that seed content has gotten better and it's competitive now, and there's Mad Men and Game of Thrones and Bethany Frankel and everything that people are watching.
I love that you put Game of Thrones and Bethany Frankel.
I had to do
in the
that.
same
I had to do that
sentence.
because I know there's some fans out here. But the audience is fork. Right, the audience have forked, so basically that singular event no longer exists. So I think there absolutely are no lines. And a quick show of hands here in the audience: how many people here watch TV? And how many people here watch TV while holding an iPad, an iPod, the iPhone or a BlackBerry? It's almost 1-to-1, right? And that's that's universal now.
So do you ever think those two screens are going to converge into one screen, all of the information on one? Or are we always going to use two screens?
I think people are trying to do that right now. If you were at CES, you saw a lot of the split screen things on the smart TVs. But one of the key things that I think makes this work, right? Everyone's talking about second screen. The second screen has actually been, created and almost perfected by companies like Twitter, because the first screen is public. right? That's your television. That's the thing that's broadcasting. The second screen is private, right? It's private to you in your hand of what you're authoring, and I think that's what makes a huge difference, right? So that takes the one-to-one conversation of, hey, Ian, can you believe that game last night, and makes it, you know, one to many and many to many, right? So I think there are going to be instances of display that are there, but I think part of the thing that makes it work is the private second screen.
And it's like buying, I mean, who wants to buy a 70-inch flat-screen television to have 20 inches of it filled up with a Twitter timeline? I mean, I hate it when there's a Twitter, honestly, when there's a Twitter feed running below the screen, mostly because it's like YouTube comments. That's like the lowest life form of people that want to see their tweets up there. It competes with the content. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'll never forget, there's this great interview, I think it might have been here, with Matthew Weiner, who's the creator of Mad Men. He said, you know, he makes that content in a way where it's, the way he envisions his audience watching that content is in a dark room. Like no glow of any other screen, just like a dark room consumed with the content. And then, you know, when that show's over, react, because it all builds up into a climax. Now, you could argue that there's something different there with live television, mm-hmm. Like live events, sports, award shows, things like that, when there's a more natural experience. But I do think that the future is in multiple devices where the content is the choice becomes your own, not the programmers.
Well, and with live events, is it really just about the community and being able to share about the show that you're watching together, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it is?
I mean, but yeah. it changes the live event, right? It changes it makes it three-dimensional, right? Small example, right? Grammys last year, right? There was a duo up there, and I loved the song. I happened to tweet it. A friend from New Orleans writes me back, tells me it's the Civil Wars. I go to Spotify, grab the song, I look up, these guys are still playing, right? All I asked was, who is this, right? The timestamp and the fact that I was in the Grammy feed is what made that happen, right? That dimensionalizes, I think, television. Live events, as Ian is saying, I think they're sort of the things that are the social fuel for that, right? So you've got sporting events, political debates, you know, it sort of makes for the real-time back and forth, right? Similar to looking at any of these companies that are analyzing this, right? They look at their premiere window and you can kind of see the peaks and valleys, and that's their core data point, but it doesn't take in account the kind of after effects, right? The second and third windows and watching of those, right? So right now it is a live thing that I think is a catalyst for it.
Yeah, and it's audience empowerment too. I mean, it's the opportunity for people passively watching a piece of content have an active hand in the outcome.
Well, I'm actually glad that you mentioned the Grammys because I'm guessing most people in the room live here in New York, right? Is there any West Coast people in the house? Okay. So the Grammys, West Coast, were delayed by 3 hours, right? And we live there, and it was shot there. So that was kind of annoying. But I actually was here, so I got to see it live, right? But a big event happened right before the Grammys. It was Whitney Houston passing away, right? So everybody and their mother was watching the Grammys because you wanted to see the tribute, right? So what happened was on the Grammy site, all of the Twitter feed was live streamed. They made a big social media contribution to doing that for their, social TV effort. But the problem was that everybody on the West Coast saw the Twitter stream before the live feed, which kind of destroyed the entire experience. So when we're talking about live, for example, obviously that's probably a content issue for CBS to air it day and date, but how important is that? I mean, the Olympics are coming up, for instance. In 2008, we couldn't watch the opening ceremony at the time it actually went live, but this year we have live stream, NBC is going to provide that. So, when you start with something being broadcast all at the same time, how important is that?
I think social's windowless, right? So I think that's a programming break and then a community that sort of, took over, right? The Olympics is a great example because I think what's going to happen with that is that one is time zones will collapse, right? This is kind of the thing you're talking about with the Grammys. I think you're going to see a lot of, real-time athlete following and stories and people sort of hunting down backstories. You're also going to have controversy that gets accelerated, right? So a Tanya Harding moment or, Michael Phelps walking out of a hotel room, with Snoop Dogg or whatever the hell, he's doing, it's going to take over feeds. It's going to do it in such a different way than years past have done. And I think it's a pretty, it's a pretty kind of fantastic element to layer over that. You can't really, I think, control, how much of that stuff is getting live broadcast. But I think the easiest thing is to use the Matt Weiner example is, go dark on it if you don't want the spoilers, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is that's a problem that's, again, caused by a business issue. I mean, they they need to air the Grammys in prime time on the West Coast because that's when the TV time is more valuable, obviously. There's this great little piece in, of all places, Cracked.com, which is usually like the top 10 hottest porn scenes and sickest murder scenes in movies. But there was this great piece that I constantly refer back to, and it's all about farts. Not what you'd think, but I can't believe I just said that on a panel. That's awesome. But it's a concept called forced artificial scarcity. And it's because it's on crack, they shorten it to farts. But the notion is that businesses are taking content which is now medialess, right? Physical medialess. I mean, it exists in bits and bytes, and it's transmitted over the air, and we share and consume it over the air. So it's no longer on a tape, on a reel. There's absolutely nothing keeping it scarce but the business model around it. So time, restricting content to a time block is preserving a problem that these businesses were built to solve, which was reaching millions of people at one time. And I think it's a Clay Shirky quote where where people spend more time preserving the problems that they are the solution for. And I think that's a classic network.
Well, so I'm just going to move on since we're running out of time. But we've got social apps like GetGlue and Miso and now Shazam. We've got broadcast networks like ABC creating their own Oscars experience. And then we have, Twitter and Facebook. What's the right way to go about social television and sharing with each other?
I mean, I think the prevailing way of doing it is the hashtag. And it's crazy that it went from some random Christmas scene at Google thing to what it is today. But and Twitter's really pushing that. I mean, they took out their first TV spot to promote the hashtag around live events. And I think that's generally the way to do it. I mean, especially because Twitter works across platform. It's a platform hundreds of millions of people are already using and are all connected to. It's synchronous. A lot of these check-in services are proxies for getting content created about a show. We don't really need that because if we're actually interested in a show, we're going to talk about it beyond saying, I'm currently watching this, or I'm currently accumulating points on Vigil because I'm watching this show, with no meat behind that. And incentivized viewing is probably redeeming a Groupon in terms of quality.
Especially if the incentive is a badge, which nobody really wants.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's completely on point. I mean, I think Twitter's open source, right? So you're going to get the most amount of activity and users, the lowest barrier to entry to usage for that, right? So things like GetGlue and I think they've created the first eco for a vertical, right, that is dedicated to that. But Twitter it's a data store. It's real-time data. It's getting created in volumes, right? And if programmers actually do want to deliver additional content to seed the graph, they don't have to go to a primary app. They can seed the graph in real time on these meta platforms.
And it doesn't actually reflect what's going on either in these services. I mean, GetGlue's most checked in show last week I think was with 19,000 was Nikita on the CW. Not exactly the X-Files, but I mean, unless there are a lot of Nikita fans.
But then True Blood did really well, which is obvious why.
Yeah.
Because that's such a meaty show.
Right.
Yeah, but that's also an audience of authors, right? It's an audience of authors, right? So it sort of changes that, And the other thing, just to bring it back to kind of what you were talking about, is I think what's the best badge in the world, right? It's followers, it's retweets, right? These are things that you can't exactly game, right? They kind of have to, be content and authorship driven, right? And I think that's sort of the.
Well, I'm going to thank you.
Are we getting cued off?
Keyboard cat.
We're getting
Awesome.
pianoed
Amazing.
off.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.